EMP Series, Revolution, Chapter 3. Carl and his two-man security team hiked through the woods adjacent to the power line trail. They stayed in the tree line to avoid being seen if the trail was being watched. They slowly and cautiously approached the area that was directly behind the church property. Carl signaled for the security team to stay put. He had briefed them on the ride down the mountain on the protocols to be used. They knew that he had to go in alone. The closer they got to the church, the greater the chance that they would be seen. Carl was certain that Captain Crawford would have men watching the church. Carl would walk slowly for 300 yards or so and stop to listen and watch for several minutes. He would then proceed another 300 yards and stop again. This process was tedious, but he knew it was necessary. Where the tree line ended and the large open lot at the back of the church began, Carl got down into the prone position. He crawled along just inside the edge of the tree line until he had reached the far left corner of the property. He could see the tower and pulled out his PVS-14 night vision scope to confirm that it was being manned currently. He smiled as he realized that Greg was not going to let the security at the church slack for an instant. Carl scanned the base of the tower along the walkway and down to the pavilion. He picked up 5 men in all from what he could see. 1 in the tower, 2 at opposite ends of the pavilion, and 1 walking patrol along the perimeter. He also noticed another walking patrol in front under the carport by the main entrance to the church. 5 in all. He was certain that there would be more down along the driveway toward the road and at the parsonage and barn area. He knew Greg, and he knew the security would be on high alert since the incident days early at Carl's farm. He had to get in without being seen, or he knew they would sound an alarm, which would tip Crawford's men that something was up, if in fact they were close by. His security team was approximately 1/4 mile directly behind him, off the main power line trail. He was sure that he hadn't passed anyone on his way from there to where he was now. It was just the flanks that concerned him. After watching both sides carefully and considering his options closely, he decided to go to the right and skirt down along the base of the tower and past the rear entrance to the pavilion. He knew he could time the walking patrols out and get by the pavilion guards undetected. It was the tower guard that presented the biggest threat. He waited until the timing on the walking patrols was right and he made his move. He reached the base of the tower without being seen. Greg and Lee had a small living quarters set up in the basement under the pavilion. It was adjacent to the back room where the radio equipment was set up. Carl knew that Greg stayed close by to the radios whenever he was on site. He knew that if his instincts about the heightened security were accurate, that everybody would be on site and the property would be locked down. All he had to do was make it inside to where he was sure Greg would be, and he was home free. In town, sitting leisurely on the bench on the train platform, was Billy the Kid Bennett. He appeared to not have a care in the world. The truth, however, was that he was growing increasingly concerned. He was watching the activity in town, and between him and his 2 brothers from the motorcycle club, they rotated shifts to provide constant surveillance. In the time they spent in town, they were able to ascertain that both Buddy Tanner, as well as Hammer and Lee, were all dead. The only member unaccounted for was their primary target, Roger. Billy Bennett was concerned because they were not able to generate one solid lead as to where Roger was. It was as if he had fallen off the face of the earth. Given Roger's background and expertise, Billy knew that there was no scenario in which this was good for him or his mission. Not only would he have to return to the club and inform them that Buddy Tanner, the club president, and his entire advanced team were dead, he would also have to inform them that Roger was gone without a trace. He wasn't willing to give up yet. He had a few more days before he would be forced to admit defeat. As he watched the trading posts and the military command offices, he was able to find out about the killings at the farm and that the constable was a suspect and now on the run. He saw a lot of activity coming and going from the command offices. Something was going down. Dozer, one of the club's enforcers, was on watch yesterday when they brought Frank into custody. He knew he was the constable's deputy, and he was being held on suspicion that he was involved in the murders. Dozer told Billy that he had seen them bring him into an old warehouse next to their offices, and nobody had been seen coming or going since. He also reported hearing brutal, blood-curdling screams coming from inside. They knew what was going on. They had employed similar tactics before themselves. Carl slipped quietly down along the pavilion basement wall. He checked the handle on the door. It was unlocked. He turned it slowly and opened the door. As he started to ease in silently, he heard the breech of a shotgun open and close rapidly. Just as Greg started to speak, he noticed the man standing before him was Carl Fairley. He lowered the shotgun and pulled Carl into the basement. He looked around quickly outside to make sure he was alone before closing and bolting the door shut. "Brother, are you crazy? Do you know how hot this place is? That new captain has been out several times today. He's got men stationed down the road in both directions, and who knows where else. I'm quite sure they're watching the place right now. It's not safe for you here." "I know, Greg, but I had no choice. Nobody saw me come in. I need to see Pastor Sharps. So much has happened." "Yeah, that's an understatement. What happened out at your place the other day?" "I'll brief you all at once, Greg. Please, get Pastor. Get Steve and Richie, too." "Roger that, brother," Greg responded. He handed Carl the shotgun, told him to settle in. He motioned to the big Berkey water filter on the counter and told him to help himself to fresh water. Minutes later, Greg, Pastor, Richie, and Steve walked into the pavilion basement. Pastor rushed over and gave Carl a hug. The others followed and did the same. Pastor asked Carl if he was okay, if he was hurt. He asked him if he had gotten any sleep in the last 2 days. Carl assured him that he was okay. He told him Abigail and the kids were safe and secure, and the fewer details he told them, the better off they would be. "Agreed," said Greg, as the others nodded. Steve spoke up. "I knew it. I knew Stillman was bad news, and I knew it didn't go down like they said it did. This is not good, Carl. What are we going to do?" Carl said, "Well, brother, for now, we're limited as to what we can do. The most immediate problem is Frank, my new deputy. Captain Crawford has him in custody, and I can only imagine what they're doing to him." Greg slammed his fist down on the table and got up and paced around. He was angry that the military would employ such tactics. Greg served honorably in Vietnam, and he came home to a nation that reviled him. He struggled with his demons from that war for a long time. He was wound up tight, and he wanted to take immediate action. He started shouting orders. "Steve, get the M60 and all the ammo we have for it and load it into the power wagon. Richie, get 6 more men, now. Make sure they have a full loadout. Get the bus fueled and get ready to go. Richie and I are in the power wagon. Steve, you and Carl and Pastor, along with the rest of the men, are in the bus. We are going right in through the front gate. We're going to burn that place down and get Carl's man out." "Whoa, whoa, whoa," Pastor said. "Slow down a second, Greg. That plan's a bit hasty." Steve chimed in. "Greg, there's a few problems with that action, brother. We need to think it through before we make any moves." Greg, visibly shaken, sat back down. "I only met Frank a couple times. I know he's a veteran. I also know he saw a lot of action. I see the way he looks through people sometimes. I can spot it a mile away. And he's a patriot. He's one of us now. And he's in a cage because he believes in a cause and committed himself to it. I don't care what anybody else does, but I am not leaving him in there with them. We must get him out. Period. Whatever the cost." "I agree," said Carl, "but we need a plan that has at least a chance of succeeding. We'll discuss it." Carl looked directly at Greg. "I've been there too, brother. Trust me when I tell you that I have no intention of leaving Frank in there. You're absolutely right. He's one of us now, and he's my responsibility. I can't put anyone else at risk in this." Greg looked back at Carl. "Where I come from, we either all get out together or we all don't get out together. No man is going to be left behind." Carl smiled at Greg. "You must have been a jarhead. Not a lick of common sense." Greg smiled back. "Just make sure you stay behind me and you'll be okay." Pastor spoke up. "Well, I don't want to interfere here with your bromance, but when Frank came to church last week, he had a woman and a child with him. A wife and daughter, I presume. How are they holding up?" "I was getting to that," Carl responded. "They were all camped out in the woods before Frank started working for me. Nobody's seen them since the incident at the homestead. I'm thinking they're still out there. They are, no doubt, scared to death. I'd like to try to bring them in. I could use some help." Pastor asked, "Where's the camp?" Carl told him that they were camped in the woods somewhere out by the base of the dam on the downriver side. He wasn't sure exactly where. Greg looked at Steve. "Take 2 men with you, rifles and sidearms. Take the power wagon." He glanced at his watch. "Leave in 1 hour. That should put you up there just before first light. Start up at the top of the dam. Park in the lower lot and hike up so that the truck doesn't get spotted. See what you can see from up there. If you don't spot them, then spread out and walk down around the side of the dam. Work your way through the woods in a grid pattern until you find them. Remember, they're scared, and I'm betting she's armed. Don't get shot and get back as soon as you can." Steve nodded and left the basement. Pastor walked over to Carl and put his hand on his shoulder. "Carl," he said, "don't worry. The guys will get Frank's family. They'll bring him in safely, and everything's going to work out, brother. No matter how bad things look, you have a family here. And like Greg said before, no man will be left behind." Greg, Richie, and Carl sat silently as Pastor led the men in prayer. He asked the Lord for safety for Carl and for his family, for Frank and his family also. Pastor asked for a peaceful resolution to the escalating situation developing currently. He gave thanks for the blessings that they all enjoy every day, and for the strength to accept God's will, whatever he would have for them to endure. When they were done praying, the men sat in quiet reflection of what the recent days had brought. Carl was thankful for his friends and church family. He knew he would need them all in the days to come.